Well, here I am sitting with the legendary Rob Bucket Hingley of the Toasters. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, Adam, is it snowing up there yet?
We had 2.5 feet of snow here last week, and it's perfectly green out here now. So,
Yeah, well,
abs-
2.5 feet of snow is nothing for upstate New York, right?
yeah, pretty much. But they gave it to us all in one night, so that made it a lot of fun.
Well, my wife's from Syracuse, so she at one point showed me pictures of snowdrifts all the way up the back of her house, and the kids were climbing out the dormer window and tobogganing down the roof into the snowdrifts, which are about 15 feet high, and they had like a
Yeah,
tunnel through the snow. So I know what it gets like up there.
it definitely gets crazy. So, here we are rolling into the holiday season. I thought, as I picked my son up from the airport with his family, and his girlfriend's daughter brought up that, my goodness, all Christmas music sounds the same. And I said, hold on a second. And of course, I put our regular listening for holiday Christmas music, which always starts off with what you guys released back in, what was it, 97 or 98? But the Christmas
Yeah,
Ska album.
98.
And her face lit up. She was like, wait, it sounds like Christmas, but this sounds completely different. And so we had a lot of fun with that. And that's something I'd definitely like to get to. But checking in with you, how is everything? Are you hunkered down in your hole for now as far as touring goes, or?
I just got back from South America. We were down there for 3 weeks, down in Mexico, El Salvador, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Chile, Colombia. So that's good. That's putting a little bit more effort into getting down there on more often because it's such a great market. But just
Uh,
pretty disorganized and difficult to get all the promoters in a row down
I
there.
could,
But yeah, we had a good time. But generally, not touring so much. At least not during the winter. I think I'm over that. No more snow for this old guy.
I could appreciate that. I remember we've seen more than a few shows in Buffalo and Rochester with you here. Um, But yeah, definitely. South America is absolutely incredible. I mean, we just had Adesivo play in Supernova last year, and that is just so much energy, and I think very
Yeah, those
representative.
guys. Those guys helped organize the show in El Salvador. It's our first time in there. I was really surprised how many punks and skinheads there were there. Actually, um,
Outstanding.
way more than Guatemala, which is like a more general audience. But there's a lot of people who are like diehard fans, and what they like is kind of odd. They're not really too much into like the US ska punk bands, but they're really into two tone bands. They're really into Moon Records bands
Mhm.
because that's like they remember that fondly. But there's a lot of bands who I thought would be more popular down there that aren't. Obviously, they know the Bosstones, but I mean, a band like Mustard Plug, for example, um, is not very well known down there. I guess they've never been, one thing, but it's definitely a different kind of scene down there.
Certainly, certainly. Well, here we are on the PCC multiverse, is what we call it. It's the Pop Culture Cosmos multiverse. This is the home of all things pop culture. We we leave nothing unturned as far as pop culture goes. Uh, I got a great group of friends here, and we play Dungeons and Dragons. We play Vampire the Masquerade. They discuss movies, concerts, anything they can uh, to really kind of put a light on what's happening today. But also looking back at what happened in the past as well. And of course, comic books are a huge part of that. And for those who aren't very familiar with Bucket, uh, could you tell us a little bit about how the Toasters came to be and what you were doing before that started?
Yeah, it's actually funny you mention that. It's timely because I've just actually got back into comic books over the last month. I've been helping Joe Jackson get his comic book collection sold. He has a bunch of Silver Age Marvel and DC and a run of EC comics, which is ironic because the reason I met him in London in 1978 when I was working for Forbidden Planet, I was the guy that was in charge of digging out all those books for him for his collection. And here I am, like 25 years later, helping him sell them. So the wheels come full motion. So I've been back in touch with a lot of the Forbidden Planet guys and a lot of the guys in. Unfortunately, some of them have passed away, and a lot of the old school guys in the New York and Brooklyn comic book scene. So that was like turning over a rock and seeing what crawled out, but it was kind of fun. But having said that, I mean, the toasters came about because I was working at Forbidden Planet, which if people don't know what that is, it was a science fiction and comic book store, multimedia, toys, horror, fanzines, all that kind of stuff. That was on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and it's a bit of a cultural mecca. So there's always people from the music scene and from the science fiction scene hanging out there. Um, and that's I was kind of managing that place and training people and buying collections for them. And originally, I was supposed to be in New York for 6 months doing that, and that period kept on getting extended and extended and extended. So eventually, I thought, well, I better put a band together, so I got something to do in the evening, and so that's how the Toasters got started. Basically, just a band, like a jam band, that we go play like after hours with a bunch of guys from Forbidden Planet and my roommate Steve Hex on keyboards, and then that's what turned into the Toasters finally after a couple of twists and turns. And
Sure,
so,
sure.
yeah, so it all came about from the comic book store, essentially.
That's actually fantastic. I mean, it definitely not as indie as a comic book store, but I had very similar relationships with my employees at Blockbuster. We had, as soon as the shift was over, we would, essentially end up listening to music, playing video games, and drinking some beers. But, I still
mm,
talk to a lot of those guys today. Unfortunately for us, we didn't have any of the talent that you all possessed.
well,
But I,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how much talent there was there at the beginning, but definitely, it was definitely a rough diamond to start with, but it took a little bit of polishing.
sure, but I'm sure a lot of people could relate to those early jobs that you ended up having and those connections you made, and how important they can be to not just who you are as a person, to your memories, but what life could end up becoming, in its entirety.
Well,
So that's
what it
outstanding.
was like it was a mix of people. There were like three or four people from the Forbidden Planet crew, who were mostly playing in other bands at that time, like punk bands or reggae bands. And my roommate Steve, who was actually a genetic engineer at Rockefeller University, who turned out to be able to play keyboard, so he said he joined. And then the bass player was a girl from the local bar we'd hang out on, which was on Avenue A between 7th and 8th Street. It's called the Park Inn Tavern, the Pit. And the guitarist was the brother of the bartender there. And that bar actually is pretty funny because they had this little kid used to hang out there after school. He was like a latchkey kid, and his mother used to go pick him up there when she got out of work at 6 o'clock. And that little kid who was sitting there by the Robotron machine was actually Harley Flanagan, who went on to be in the Cro-Mags. So there's a there's 7 steps to Kevin Bacon, that bar. Um, but it was like an amalgam, and then we ended up getting we played a showcase gig at CBGB's, and Hilly liked us and put us on the weekend, and and the rest kind of history.
Yeah, it certainly is. For a lot of people that are familiar with the Toasters already, there's really no need to go further on. Your course has been absolutely studied and learned, and it is quite legendary from Moonscott to with Megalith, everything in between. the amount of people that you have influenced, and the amount of touring that you do. You are an absolute machine. It's
Well,
inspiring to
machine's
all kinds of
the
people.
machine's a little rusty at the moment.
Fair enough, fair enough. But
Yeah,
that's some well earned rust right there.
yeah.
But again, like I said, heading into the holiday season and all, I thought I'd pick your brain a little bit about Christmas, Scott. How did that come about?
Well, it was not something that we had, not a project that we'd planned on doing. That particular period was like extremely busy for us because we had just we just recorded the "Don't Let the Bastards Grind You Down" album. We were like basically doing a world tour involved in that. And we got approached by a Japanese company called Tachyon, who wanted us to basically write do an album of Christmas music. And I said, well, I'm not sure if I actually have time to do that at the moment, but I could probably, I could probably do half of it and throw, do one side with the Toasters and throw the other side out to a bunch of other guys in New York, which ended up being King Django, Buford O'Sullivan, the Blue Beats, uh, New York Ska Jazz, uh, and so that happened essentially, and we went in the studio and we recorded the whole thing, including rehearsing it and writing. I think we wrote 3 or 4 original Toasters tunes for that, and the whole thing took us 3 days to
That is
rehearse it, to write tunes, rehearse it, record it, and mix it.
that's crazy. That's
So
incredible.
we just like fitted it in there between coming coming back from the European tour and heading right back out to the tour in Asia. So it was kind of it was just plugged into that gap. But I was lucky at that time because the band we had, which was the band that had made Dub 56 and Two Tone Army or Hard Band for Dead, should I say, and Don't Let the Bastards Grind You Down, which was like a pretty well oiled machine at that point, but with Chunk and Freddie and Sledge on the horns, Dave Barry, Matt Malice, Jonathan McCain. It was like there was nothing that band couldn't hit, not a pitch that band couldn't hit.
Absolutely. And, you bring up Dub 56. That's still one of my favorite Toasters albums. Um,
Well, a lot of you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people. I was down in Mexico last week, and Big Javi is a singer from Inspector was saying, well, that's a record. I mean, even down in Mexico, that's a record that reached down there, and he said that he thinks for him that's the best record ever. So I think there's a lot of people put their finger on that as being not just a Toasters record, but like a record, a record for the time, and the third wave and what was going on. I think that record had a lot to say, and of course, really huge feature on that, Cooley Ranks, and we were able to basically do this jazz reggae ska version record, which I had a lot of fun making that.
oh, that's fantastic. Now, for someone like me who is an unabashed fan of both the Toasters, Cooley Ranks, ska in general, but I was late to the game. I didn't really learn much about ska until, oh
When
goodness,
when did you
honestly,
when did you
this
get
is
into it?
this is going to be embarrassing. I'm an old goth. I grew up with hip hop. I grew up with street punk, um, a lot of thrash, and I ignored the entire second, third wave of ska. Excuse me, outside of a few albums. I know Operation Ivy popped in there, and that was something that hit me. But it was something I never associated with a different genre. That was just punk to me at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but it comes back to, oh goodness, about 2014, 2015. our good friend Karen Conrad said, Adam, you got to come out to the
Yeah,
ska show with me.
yeah.
And the first ska band I ever saw live was you,
That
sir.
that girl is definitely guilty as charged.
but she brought me and my wife to come see you open for the
2000,
English Beat.
2015. Wow. Yeah, that's kind of late. You're
Oh
a
yeah,
late bloomer.
very much a late bloomer, but it absolutely changed my entire perspective on music. Just seeing you guys perform, followed by the English Beat. I think that was in
Mm.
Lewiston, New York, outside
Yeah,
of
was
Buffalo.
that was that like a was that like a Michael Hanrahan gig up there? Because
You know,
he does that festival. It's called Sound of the '80s or whatever. Is that what it's called?
no, I
And
wasn't sure. It wasn't that, but it was an outdoor gig, and it was the only time I've seen you outdoors outside of Supernova. So maybe that'll ring a bell.
yeah, it
But
was It's Michael Hanrahan's gig, and he has English beat up there quite a bit.
yep,
He's a
they were
big
just
fan.
here. They were just up here in Buffalo this week,
Yeah, yeah.
and I'm
A
mad
really,
because I
really, really good band. I mean,
oh
I think
fantastic, fantastic.
that band is better now than when I used to see them back in the day.
Yeah, Dave has really just perfected everything he's done. But that was my first introduction to live ska music, and
Well,
you were
that's not a not bad way to get in.
oh not at all, not at all. You know,
It's like being thrown in the deep end, isn't it?
it kind of is. You know, I saw you guys
Mm.
perform, and I looked at Karen, and I'm like, what the hell just happened? And she goes, you got to come meet my friend Buck. And that was the first night I met you. And you know, every show we can do since. Um, I mean, getting my feet wet and dipped into ska, I started
Mm.
to realize there's not a lot being played around me, and because of your influence and what you made me feel that night, I wanted to bring ska, you know, back to Rochester, New York,
Yeah, well,
and
that's good. You had your epiphany, but it's kind of odd that I mean, sky music, um, being as it is, like such a subculture. It's kind of always interesting to me to see what is the portal that gets kids into it, you know,
mhm.
and a lot of them came in through bands like the Mighty Mighty Bosstones and Operation Ivy, or even No Doubt, kind of like reverse engineering in a way, is that they get into these bands and all of a sudden find out that that's just like peeled away this whole hidden subculture that they had really no clue about. And to a greater or larger extent, they would be able to peel that all the way back, and some of them even eventually able to get back to some of to some heritage artists like Scatlights or Laurel Aitken or the old school Jamaican bands. Very few, of course, but it's always interesting to see that. But one of the biggest surprises to me, and this is something that keeps happening, is um, people come to me and say, the reason we got into ska music and discovered your band is because we used to watch this Nickelodeon program on MTV, um, and we had written the music for this show called Kablam, and the amount of people that come up and say, that's what got me into ska music, and thanks a lot for doing that. So even now, like 20 years, 25 years after the fact, I still have people saying that. So just goes to show like what the power of television over kids is, that they could basically be so impressed with that. At least in this way, I mean, it's like something useful. We're not selling them like cereal to kill them, whatever. But that's always like interesting to me to see the sheer amount of people that got into the genre through that. Um, and otherwise, I mean, you wouldn't really know about ska music because it's kind of stuck its head above the parapet two or three times over the past 20 years, and then that's it. And if you don't know it's there, you don't know it's there.
Yeah, that's very fair to say. I mean, again, you know, from my own experience, I knew it was there, but it didn't necessarily hit me with where I was in my life at the time. Um, the way I started booking shows again was just talking with someone like yourself or Cooley Ranks or many of the other people in the ska industry, because once I got one concert, that wasn't enough. No, I had to see more ska and more ska and more ska, and I kept
Well,
meeting a bunch of people.
well, we need more. We need more people like you. You see.
Yeah, well, yeah, I hope so. I hope more people get influenced by it and feel that drive and want to help and want to see what skill set they can put out there to help to help drive and support the artists.
Well, to be
But
honest, we're still picking up the pieces after COVID, and one of the biggest effects to me of COVID was just seeing what a deleterious effect it had to the independent ska scene in terms of local independent promoters and gigs, and a lot of those guys just disappeared. I mean, maybe they died or they cashed in or couldn't hold out any longer. But it's been so much damage done to the touring mechanism. It's going to take years to put it back together, even if that's possible.
oh, absolutely. I mean, I've put a few shows together this year still, and I very much understanding and very much in the pit of it of what that is like and what that feels like and why some would disappear.
Mm.
So much is up in the air because of the pandemic that a lot of people aren't going out, and it's a really hard task to try to bring people together. And there's other aspects of that you can look at from a political standpoint of trying to get people together, like pushing two magnets of opposite ends together. Now,
Well, good luck.
granted,
Good luck.
granted,
Good luck with that.
well, granted, with ska, we're going to get a lot of people that kind of have the same polarity. But to try to expand it to new audiences is always difficult. So when you look at something like a changing political spectrum or a deepening divide, and being as political as the Toasters are, do you find it more or less difficult to get your message heard? And are you finding it a more of a challenge to, I don't know, almost say to get your voice? Um, uh, I guess I don't know. Hard way to say it. Is it more difficult to turn your megaphone on, or are you finding that it's easier to
No,
kind of
well,
yell at a brick wall?
unfortunately, I've never really had a problem with turning my megaphone on. Maybe I turn it on too much, but I think, I mean, ska music has always been a creature of challenge and a creature of revolution. If you go back to, I mean, what ska music meant at its inception in Jamaica in the '60s, it was the rebel music from the ghetto, which was the musical backdrop to their movement of independence, which is basically um, not very far short of an armed political struggle against, British imperialism. So you have to see that was the music was their flag at that point, and that carried on through England in the '60s with Trojan Records, which is a very overlooked label, I think, to my view, in terms of the historical importance of it, and right on into Two Tone, which was very political. In fact, it was just as much politics as it was music. And Two Tone music and movement was the backdrop to the whole struggle against, Margaret Thatcher's right wing government and the National Front, which was basically just like what Donald Trump's trying to be doing the last 5 years. It's exactly the same thing as we had in England in the '70s. I mean, there it came down to basically, fighting the Nazis in the streets, which hasn't quite happened here generally, except, obviously examples like Charlottesville and that. but in England it was way more widespread, and two-tone music was the banner for that movement. So to me, to me, I would say I agree with Mike Park from Skanking Pickle Asian Man Records that there isn't enough politics in ska music, and we need to put some back in.
I
That's
can
my two
absolutely.
cents.
I appreciate that. I can hear that definitely. Um, so looking at what ska is today, um, no need to really drop names or any way, one way or the other or anything, but where do you feel that it is, and what do you hope that it can become?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, it's like I think it's in a period of change at the moment. Obviously, you got some bands like the Interrupters who really blew up. Um, but is that really helping a whole bunch of grassroots bands coming up through? I don't think it is. But having said that, you got to look at like what's going on in LA, particularly with the Latin bands there and the Mexican subgenre. There's a lot of kids listening to it, and they're not all white. There's a lot more Mexican kids listening to ska music in the USA than white kids. So I think we have to kind of find a way to incorporate the scenes together and try to have more cooperation between bands like Inspector, who come up to the US and tour and sell out these huge venues and nobody even knows about it. So I think there's a way we have to put that back together. But I think ska music is alive and well, and I'm waiting for the next big thing. Seems to happen once every 12 or 15 years.
Outstanding.
I'm a proponent of the Andy Warhol 15 minutes in the limelight idea. And somebody said to me one time, music's like a broken watch. If you just stick to what you like to play and don't try chasing around after what you think people want you to play or what people want to hear. Um, a broken watch is right twice a day, but a watch that's like 1 second behind is only right about once every 150,000 years. So you better just stick to your guns and play what you want, and then it'll come around to you eventually if you're good enough.
Yeah, yeah, outstanding, outstanding. Well, Buck, I really appreciate all the time we had here, and I really appreciate your insights on what ska is right now. And
Mm.
is there any parting words you have for right now?
Yeah, bring back Westbound Train. That's what I got to say. They have a
Uh,
new record out. It's like fantastic. It's like, come on, man, what you guys doing? Get on the road.
I'd love to see Obi moving around. I saw them.
Yeah,
I saw them maybe a year or two ago, and it was an absolutely phenomenal show. That and that's a good thing. And going back to the point that you did bring up, is that yeah, ska music is alive and well. It is out there. The artists you knew 20 years ago are out there playing.
yeah. I
Uh,
mean, the bands are out there touring. I mean, if you look at the touring schedule, I mean, Mephistopheles came back strong, and they're touring now. Um, you know, not in only in yeah, I saw that. Not only in the USA, but I helped them out with the European tour, so that's good.
Mhm.
So I think we just have to put it back on the rails, and that's going to take quite a lot of elbow grease. And maybe we can have the concept that we used to have back in the day, where people used to work together. We had a really good platform in the late '80s and the early '90s, and that unfortunately got dismantled when we had the big ska charade of the '90s, where a lot of bands got promoted who I really don't think deserved to be called ska bands in the first place. And a lot of the bands who've done a lot of the hard work, I would say, notably a band like Bim Scala Bim, for example,
Mhm.
didn't get anywhere near the acclaim and the fruits of the spoils as they deserve. So, but they're still around playing. So bring back bring back bands like that. They're the old school now. So, but I think there's plenty of bands playing. There's plenty of audience there, and I think people just have to learn how to basically put the network back together, get some cooperative events working, and put the train back on the rails ourselves. It's been done twice before. It can happen again.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. I think we're all a cog in that machine. The people we interact with, the way we hold ourselves, the way we take care of each other, all kind of speaks to that. And I think if we can just bring that outside of our own skin, that something like that could absolutely happen again.
Yeah, oil my squeaky wheels, Adam.
Well, before we go too far, one other thing, and I brought it to a second there. I was like, we should probably close out a little bit here, but I completely missed asking you about.
That which one is that? Oh, that's the
This is a
that's
ghost
the
garlic.
garlic. Yeah.
Now,
Well, number one, that design is a killer. That's a Polish
oh, it's
a
fantastic.
Polish girl who does that. Called I'll plug her, Old School Design. She's on Instagram and Facebook. You can check her out. But that one is Garlic Ghost, and the story behind that is, yeah, there you go. What are you putting that on?
It's an awful chicken nugget, but
You can go get a packet of like Tupper's de mice or something. Well, there you go. How is that?
no, it's fantastic.
Mm.
I've been using this with chicken wings, eggs, tikka masala,
Oh,
and very shortly you're going to see me start crying.
Yeah, that one is a little hotter than a lot of people can manage. But we get our sauces made by this crazy guy. I'm going to plug this guy too, out in Colorado. His name is Danny Cash, and the guy is on a permanent endorphin rush because he just exists in this place where his whole store is full of swirling hot sauce vapor, and you actually literally have to, when you go in the back where they're making it, you literally have to put a gas mask on to go in the back there because you can't breathe. And so this is like he drives around Denver delivering this stuff in like a 1960s dune buggy. So the guy is out there, but his sauces are fantastic. And serendipitously, I met him because when my son graduated from college, he moved back. He was in England. He went to University of Canterbury at Kent in the UK, and he came back over here and he got a job working for Danny Cash in a hot sauce startup doing his sales and marketing. And so what happened? We were playing a show at one of the Denver venues, and this dude just shows up with this huge cardboard box full of hot sauce and plonks it down on the merch table and says, "Pick which one you like, and I'll make it for you." So we were just driving around in the van, eating hot sauce and blowing ourselves up for 2 weeks, and then but we've made, I think that's the fourth or fifth sauce we've made, and don't you know we sell more hot sauce bottles now than we sell CDs.
Oh, well,
It's
the
pretty
thing
crazy,
is,
isn't it?
I absolutely love hot food. My family actually does a hot sauce, hot wings type thing twice a year. And my wife's cousin grows his own ghost peppers, Caribbean,
Oh,
cayenne,
nice.
scorpions, Carolina reapers. And they make sauce to not only taste great, but to get this effect. And
Yeah.
the Toaster's garlic ghost sauce is the very first bottled sauce I've ever tried that has this effect.
Yeah, there you go.
But the taste is phenomenal. I absolutely
Well, we went. We've made so far. We made the first sauce we made was called the Shocker,
Yep.
and that was a smoked chipotle habanero, which isn't quite as hot as it sounds, but the flavor is incredible.
Oh, it's great, great.
Then we made a Caribbean lime, which was Serrano and lime.
Yep.
That was the razor cut. Then we made Scar Killers, which was a straight. That was a straight. What was in that? That was a cayenne, basically cayenne pepper sauce.
Okay.
And then we made Eastside Heat, which was serrano chilies and garlic. And then the latest one is that one you just shown, which is Don't Let the Bastard. That's garlic and ghost pepper.
Yep. And that's one of my favorites right there. I had to buy a bottle and send it to my son in Minnesota. He can tolerate hot food better than I can, but there's never been a sauce we would shy away from. But this is one that's going to test your mettle. It's going to test your palate, because if you can get past the heat, the flavor is phenomenal. And you have to shed a few tears, but it's worth it.
Well, Danny has sauces which are way hotter than that. I mean, he has like super hots, but they're so hot that you can't really taste them. And to me, it's kind of like, yeah, what's the point in that, really? It's like, I like to be able to. I mean, I like spicy stuff, but when it's the point of just like dudes, having a pissing contest, like, oh, I can I can do this one. It's like, what's the point in that? You'll pay for it the following morning. Trust me.
Well, oh yeah, that's it. It's hot going in, but it's lava coming out.
What they call in Mexico is la revancha de Montezuma's revenge.
There you go. But like I said, the heat on this is great, but the flavor is there. You're not just lighting your tongue on fire.
That's what it's all about, Adam.
Yes, sir. And it's the same thing for your ears with music. And unfortunately, sometimes when you listen to the Toasters, you feel like your ears are being lit on fire, but in the best way possible. It is incredible music. For those of you who haven't heard it, who might be a late bloomer to the scene, you need to go ahead and pop the Toasters onto the search menu in whatever app it is you use, and give a good listen to not just the sound, but the lyric, the content, the energy, and maybe it'll change your life too. Buck, I really appreciate you spending time with the Pop Culture Cosmos and Multiverse today, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
All right, buddy.
I feel a little less cooped up in the house now talking to you.
Well, that's awesome, man. I can't wait to see you guys again. It's always too far away and not soon enough.
Well, we're putting in some tour dates for 2023, but it's going to be a little bit limited. We're just bumping up to the fact that the touring circuit still has a lot of bumps in the road, so we're not trying to bite off too much more than we can chew. There's going to be a southeast tour to Florida. There'll be a tour to the northeast, and one out to California, and then 2 months in Europe over May and June. So we'll be around your way sooner or later.
Well, I'm happy to hear for everyone else, but I'm glad to hear about the Northeast, and I look forward to seeing you, buddy. We'll go outside and get a garbage plate.
Let me know. Yeah. That's Karen. That's another. All roads lead back to Karen Conrad. She made me eat one of those. Yeah.
That's how it goes here.
I said, why do they call it a garbage place? Oh, you're going to find out. And she was right. All right, man.
All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Take care now.
Yeah. Thanks, Adam. See ya.
All right, buddy.